So welcome to the very first 10 with Tim. I'm here today in one of our Sydney facilitation spaces, and this is an extension to the short introductory clip that was broadcast this morning. And if this is now a topic or a question more so that is of interest to you, who are you going to invest in as a leader right now? Then in no more, I promise, than 10 minutes, I'm just going to take you through these 4 categories that I'm going to suggest you consider and provide just some very, very concise recommendations for what you might actually do with each of these 4 quadrants. And they are you, yourself as a leader, the key individuals in your teams and your business, and then the team as a whole or the organization as a whole that you are leading, depending on your status, essentially the size of your organization. And then the final quadrant is stakeholders. This one is more complex. It includes, to my definition, customers, suppliers, and all of the community that your organization interacts with and interacts on and impacts on. And that's a big one for 10 minutes. So what I'm then going to do is each week for the next 4 weeks, there's going to be a 10 with Tim on each of those 4 quadrants. So you can deep dive into you, key individuals, team, and stakeholders. And if you're desperately seeking advice on one of these and you think that this is beneficial for you, but you can't wait that long, drop me a note, ask me a question, I'll gladly respond. Or you can schedule a time and we can have an initial conversation for free, okay? So let's start with you. And why should you start with you? Well, I mean, I can personally speak to this, that I've had several very near misses with severe burnout over my career. And I think when you look at it externally, it's quite obvious and logical that if you're not operating in your best capacity, then you're not going to lead to your fullest potential. But time and time again, I've done it myself and I've seen it hundreds of times with executive leaders that I've worked with and for, that they don't look after themselves. I don't look after myself. You get stressed, you get tired, you get exhausted, and then your leadership suffers, and no surprise, your team and your organizational performance decline as well. So how to invest in yourself? There can be very basic things, having little, sort of pauses during the day, even just a couple of minutes of rest in between meetings, and not a rest horizontally, let alone asleep or even meditating, but just some little down regulation, which at the moment, with the heightened productivity of just slotting in Zoom meetings one after the other, there's been a real degrading of. But also sleep, as the most powerful rest area you can get, but also nutrition and stimulus, but then also connection and building on the areas that individually are the best performance and productivity sustainers for you. I had this conversation on Better World Leaders with Dr. Adam Fraser, who's a human performance researcher, and we talked specifically about regenerative resilience and this way of really investing in yourself in order to remain resilient. So more on all of that to come in the You 10 with Tim next week. So the next one is then key individuals. So this is ultimately where all of the conversations I've had with clients in the last couple of months around this topic have gone, that they simply don't have the time, resources, funds, budget to invest in their whole team, let alone their whole organization. So let's be specific and let's look at the key individuals that are the real drivers of performance at the team or organizational level. And then you can also take this sort of specific precision approach to thinking about customers, suppliers, and stakeholders as well. But for now, we're just going to talk about team. And the way that I've helped, I hope, to navigate this decision-making framework with my clients is to think about who's creating value in your organization, who is one of the sort of biggest incubators of productivity. Are they not just productive themselves, but do they enable the productivity of others? And then also, who is most aligned and truly living your values? And if you had to pick one, the one of those that I will always recommend you focus on first is the alignment with values. And that in my experience, both in teams that I've led, the organisation that I lead now, and our client side engagements, that if you want to sustain success and if you want to get a return from an investment, the best return on investment and the best way to sustain success is to focus on enhancing and rewarding those who best align with your values, that they are the ones who are going to get you furthest in the long term. I appreciate right now there's a lot of short-term pressure, so you might want to look at the value creators, but do not compromise those that are value aligned as you do so. Then the team and the organisation. Now, depending on how big the team is and how big the organisation is, arguably you might say, well, how can you even consider investing in whole anythings right now? There isn't the time, the availability of resources, the opportunity to gather as whole units. So how would we meaningfully invest in them? Well, I would say there's a number of ways that you can do that. The firstly is, of course we can gather. Like, we're all gathering now. We're just doing so in a way that a lot of people, a lot of organizations are not as used to as they are gathering personally. And it is trickier. There are more nuances. There are different techniques and methodologies to use to have a meaningful gathering virtually. But there are absolutely ways to do it, focusing on connection, focusing on values, bringing people's stories and experiences to life. All of those and many, many more that I'll go into in 3 weeks' time in the 10 with Tim are absolutely means that you can invest in bringing teams and organizations together. And then more broadly, you can give them tools and resources to enable themselves to individually and in small units assess where they're up to and where they then individually and in small units can invest. So you can give a blanket approach to, here's a way to understand and come back to us with a request for what you want to do. And then you can individually and in small group units give recommendations at a more localized level about what you then can do to maximize the return on what you ask for. So more on team and organization in 3 weeks. And now the final area, stakeholders. This is a biggie, it's a tricky one, a lot of different variabilities in this depending on a huge number of different marks in the equation. But this will be one where I'll try to be more general, but I'll give some specific anecdotes across a number of sectors that we work in, therefore hoping to create some practical, actionable sort of intervention suggestions for a few different sectors and opportunities. This will be a complex topic, but I think really just again thinking about which of your customers can you invest in? Can you build some collaboration? Can you do something that is going to give them something more than they might expect from you right now? And that's an investment that will pay back in time. Same with suppliers, and I know supplier relations are complex at the best of times, but right now a number of organisations are really, really struggling to keep up with demand because they have not very well managed their supplier relationships. And that's not just about overseas and overly complex and overly stretched supply lines. It's about people not really putting their supply relationships where they should be. And then finally, community. This is an enormous topic, but one which I think a lot of organisations have really recently come round to engaging with because all communities are dealing in their own ways with different versions of this problem. So that will be 4 weeks' time. Those are the 4 quadrants that I would suggest you consider as you decide who you're going to invest in right now. That was time with Tim in depth as 10 with Tim. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to see you and your comments in relation to the next one. If any of the ideas I've covered today have been of interest, you can find more of these messages at 4ileadership.com/insights or search Tim Collings on YouTube. And if you like, subscribe to get the daily broadcast in your YouTube feed.